All right. Well, here it is, episode 54. I did some changes to the cameras here, so let's do some adjusting. See if it all looks good. See if it sounds good. See if it feels good. And what's up, everybody? I've been doing some technical changes on my end, so hopefully everything is coming out okay and looks good, sounds good, feels good, all that stuff. Let's see. Sorry for the armpit shot. I feel like I always do that to you. Kind of makes me feel bad. There we go. All right. What's up, everybody? This is episode 54. Hopefully the audio, the video, everything's coming in clear. If it's not, of course, I'm sure you'll let me know. So as usual, thanks to the regulars. Thanks for everybody jumping on here. During the little intro there, I was watching your guys' conversations pop up, and I like to see you guys getting personal in the comments section. This is on here. What's up, Rochelle? Lenore, Kim, what's up, everybody? I think I saw Natalie on here. Yep. What's up, Natalie? Let's see who else we got. Who else we got at the beginning of the show? Casey's on here. You guys, you know what to do. If you want to ask questions, that's totally cool. That's usually what the show is, but this week is going to be slightly different, just in the sense that I didn't put out, even though I had plenty of time to do so, I didn't put out any questions for everybody. Let's see here. For everybody to get rolling with. It's just going to be me sharing some thoughts, talking with you guys. Maybe a short episode today. Who knows? Maybe not. It's actually impossible to predict that, but here we go. Yep, Rochelle, what's up? You guys know I love to see the flags. Let's get all those up here. Let's see here. Christy says it's Flag Day. That's right. It's Wednesday, Flag Day. What's up, Ian? Thanks for being on here. Guys, we're going to get straight into the topic of the night. If you haven't already seen the thumbnail, here we go. All right, so this is going to be the theme for the night. So each night when I go to sleep, I die. And the next morning when I wake up, I am reborn. And that's obviously the wise words of the infamous Gandhi. I was actually looking up a bunch of quotes, and there were so many of them regarding sort of this type of subject, but this one was just so good. I feel like it served the purpose of tonight's stream. So if you guys want to get on board and chime in, which obviously you guys are in here now, but if you're watching this and you're not commenting or you're not joining in the chats, I encourage you to do so. Maybe this time I won't block you if you don't listen to and heed my words. Casey's on here. Give us some flags. Still need some. Actually, I might have to move. Let's see here. I wonder if I can do this live, if I can move these comments. If I can move the comments so you guys can all see it. Ian said, it really is Flag Day. How appropriate. Let's do this. Let's get them a little smaller here. Let's do that. So maybe these can pop up. There we go. All right, so now we're ready to rock and roll. All right, so I've been like super deep into this concept lately, which is dying to yourself and being reborn again. It's nothing new, I'm sure, to you guys to conceptualize this to some extent, but I just figured I would share some personal insight regarding this. It's been something that's very, I'm definitely in the season of it as we speak. My kids are growing up, my business is changing, I'm changing, my skill set is changing, my body's changing. I'm 40 now, in case you guys wanted to know. I'm old. Brody says, every day I wake up, I am thankful for another day. Let's see if I can get the right. There we go. I'm learning the keys. That one's really long. Okay. And yes, I wish I could bring up the buttons for these comments, but I can't, unfortunately, because my sound effect board, the OG sound effect board, is down. I'll fix it soon, but I still can't figure it out. And Ian saying he's getting a lot of compliments on my art lately. Well, of course you are, Ian. It's awesome. And we did a good job. That's cool to hear that people are enjoying it. It's really cool. Okay, so with this being said, each night when I go to sleep, I die, and the next morning when I wake up, I am reborn. That's really the subject I would like to get into tonight and sharing with you guys. Really, probably even some like basic background or some general background. It kind of makes me think about my life as a kid growing up and how, obviously you're only supposed to be a toddler for so long. You're only supposed to be an infant to a child to, a young adult to an adult to, let's say, a wise person or an old person to eventually just straight up decrepitude. There's a natural order of things. And I think a lot of people actually like to, I think, stave it off. I actually just had a good conversation about this the other night with some friends over a barbecue and just kind of thought about it, like hit me. We can go like full circle with all this information, but in this concept, but something that I thought of was, especially cosmetics. It's kind of a weird segue into it, maybe seemingly unrelated, but the idea is thinking of like how we die, onto our old selves and how we're reborn again. And, take this with a grain of salt, but I thought about it the other night that, people try to, in today's modern world especially, we like to hide age. We like to hide imperfections. We like filters. We like makeup. We like cosmetics. We like hair color. We like to make sure we're in full control of the way people, perceive us as opposed to just being us. And I think that's just it dawned on me the other night when we were talking about this that it's just another form, I guess, of avoiding letting yourself age, letting yourself move on, it's the unacceptance of reality. It's the unacceptance. Now, I'm not saying if you guys are wearing makeup or if you're dyeing your hair or if you have a gray beard and you want to dye it, that it's the worst thing in the world. I just think it was just ironic because it hit me like a ton of bricks when I thought of it this way, because this being reborn idea has been on my mind a lot lately, last probably a few months, and just more than usual. And I was just thinking about how much we like to hide behind everything. We want to stave off age. We want to stave off reality, stave off who we really are. We want to prolong as long as we can. We want to try to, hold on to what was as opposed to let be what is. And I think that it's quite ironic. I'm not saying it's always the worst thing in the world. I just think, especially cosmetically, it's just very obvious, especially in today's world, we're not acceptant of the new us that we're becoming. So I think there's a huge difference, for example, of being healthy mentally, physically, and spiritually, and looking your best, feeling your best, acting your best, as opposed to, hiding behind so many, let's say, things that misshape your face or recontour your face or, again, I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole. I just thought it was interesting that we hide so much behind the filters of life, if you will. And so I'll ramble on a lot about some of these things, but taking it full circle from, in life, we're supposed to grow up, we're supposed to change, and these things are supposed to be, we're supposed to let go of the past and accept the future or accept the present. And I think we could all, I know I can for sure, do a lot better there. So I'll try to do my best as usual, you guys, getting into the comment section and make sure I don't miss you guys, but I'll do my best. And if I do, I apologize. And if you have questions and I don't get to them, of course, you can always re-ask them, and I'll do my best there. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, I wish my buttons were still working. Natalie says, yesterday is gone. Don't worry about tomorrow, for it will bring its own obstacles. Be present today and give it hell. Yeah, we're always, there's no point in worrying about tomorrow's problems. Those will present themselves very soon for you, and you can worry about them then. Christy says, I just chopped my head off all my photos. There you go. Ian says, rebirth is important. Cleanse yourself of the things that hold you back and progress forward. Let's see here. Rochelle says, the best compliment I've received while working alongside our baby sister is that people think we are same/close at age, but I love getting older. Always have, always will. That's the thing is like, of course, it's always nice to be as healthy as possible, to look as youthful and young as possible, and to, feel good about who we are and I guess, what we're doing, and to see the results of our hard work, or at least the results of taking care of yourself. Some people do a pretty bad job at caring for themselves throughout life. Again, in many ways, but especially, it shows. Like, I think everything starts to materialize in the physical world, meaning like in your body starts to show whether or not you've cared for yourself. A lot of people do a pretty terrible job at that. And then when it's too late, they complain about it. They want surgery, they want filters, they want to cover it up. And it's just, like I said, I think it's another way for people to not accept reality and not to let yourself age gracefully. But it's not just the way we look, obviously. It's everything that we do in our lives. All right, so what I was really thinking with these quotes, especially with this Gandhi quote, which, by the way, I've always loved Gandhi. Somebody actually gave me a book. It was The Wise Words of Gandhi when I was going through some pretty terrible experiences with, let's say, just call it for what it is, but like child support court and child custody court. It was really, really tough times. And somebody had handed me a book, The Wise Words of Gandhi, and it was really transformative because I'd never read anything like that before. And this one really stood out to me. That each night when I go to sleep, I die, and the next morning when I wake up, I am reborn. Because I think one of the biggest issues regarding this, and I'll do my best to kind of illustrate what I mean as clear as possible here. I think what happens is people don't realize, like, it's a really good example. I think this quote is a really good example of how we get it wrong. When we wake up in the morning, we don't want to get up. We don't want to start the day. We don't want to face our problems. We go straight to our phones. We go straight to our devices. We go straight to our distractions. And a lot of times we end up wasting our time, which I've heard put best is, if you're wasting your time, you're wasting your life. Your time is your life. So when you say I'm spending time with somebody, you're spending your life with somebody. Like right now, we're spending time here. Technically, we're spending our lives here as we speak. And when we wake up, regarding this quote, we don't like to see it always as a rebirth, because then that means we should probably take it a little more serious and do better with the time that we've been given, with the opportunity of life that we've been given. And I think we screw that up a lot. I know I do. And I've had to learn the hard way, which I think is the only way. But I've gotten quite good at least recognizing if I wake up on the quote unquote wrong side of the bed, that I check myself pretty quickly, so that I can do my best to get on the right side of the fence, if you will. Also, the idea of dying every time you go to sleep, regarding the quote, it's a chance for you to let go of what has been. It's all done. It's all over. The past is the past, and you can move on. And I think in a dream world, we can just tell ourselves, well, you don't have to hang on to your limitations in the past. You can just be reborn again. Every day is anew, and just move on and let it go. And if it was that easy, then that would be great, but it usually isn't. It's a lot of work. And what I find is, in a perfect dream world, you can go to sleep and let all your problems go. When you wake up, just be a complete clean slate and, live the now life of your dreams. But it's just not reality. That's not how it works. It seems to me that it's an ongoing process. Every night and every morning seems to be an ongoing process reminding us that, well, potentially could remind us that we have another opportunity. And every night we get to have this, moment of letting go of the past. It's over, and wake up, and it's all anew. I think if we appreciated that for what it really is, our lives would be much different and probably much richer, much fuller. One thing that really stands out to me as well regarding this, and why I actually picked this subject for tonight, was how hard it is. I think there's three big things that hold us back from wanting to be reborn. One is you have to face the truth and what's reality. Like, what are your habits? What are your rituals? What are the ongoing repetitive, themes of your life? It's so hard to accept that because we want to blame it on everybody else. So accountability is something I think a lot of us screw up. Often I see that a lot, where people think that their life is what it is because of everybody else, which is, even if it's true, it doesn't serve you well. You might as well just accept that it's you that's doing this. Works a lot better for you. So staying on track there with my thought is keeping, with the three things that I think a lot of people get wrong, which is one, not taking ownership of the trajectory of their life and their actions. I think the next one, and one of the reasons why I would say we do terrible with the rebirth part of our lives, is because our habits they're so deeply entrenched in our lives, and I think it's really hard to escape that. I think we all do really, really well to accept that we all obviously have deep-rooted habits, and to get over them, if we could just wave a wand, that would be great. If we could snap our fingers and say, I don't want to do that anymore, I want to do this instead. It's usually not the case. Psychologically, I think people have a trajectory based off their habits. I've even heard quotes regarding that. I'll paraphrase that say something like, show me a man's habits and I can show you his future, because people don't just change overnight unless there's some traumatic event or something monumental. It usually is a path you're walking down for quite some time. Natalie says, my wrinkles, smile lines, and sunspots are who I am. I feel blessed to be perfectly okay with my age, and I love my inside spirit and focusing on spreading light and love. No filters ever. I think that's cool. I think as I get older, and I'm sure it's a little different for guys than it is for women to see the aging parts of our bodies and our face, but I don't think it has to be any better or worse. I think it's maybe different, might hit us differently, but at the same time, I think it should be embraced. I think it's better to be embraced, one, because you're not going to avoid it, that's for sure. Ian says, off topic, but coming back to California in October and love to get a session in. It's a possibility. You'll have to message me. Unfortunately, I'm very booked, so I'm actually not sure what my schedule is at the time. Honestly, I wish I could just go through DMs as usual, but I'll be honest with you, Ian, if you want to get an appointment, the best way to do it is go through the website again, and then that way the girls will handle it, or at least forward it to me so it won't get missed. Natalie says, life's problems and people hurting you are easier to let go of than grief. Grief becomes a part of you. I'm going to read that again. Life's problems and people hurting you are easier to let go of than grief. Grief becomes a part of you. It's interesting. I don't exactly know how to respond to that, just because I think that might mean something different for everybody. The grief becomes part of you. But I think life's lessons, something my father told me a long time ago is, you don't have to worry about forgetting, because you ain't going to forget. And it was actually regarding something quite painful, but I just thought it was interesting, because sometimes I think we hold on to things because we're afraid that they will be gone once we let them go. And oftentimes you'll find that they're still there. So stop hanging on so tightly, expending so much energy to hold on to things that want to die. Now, it's a brutal way of putting it, but that's how I see it. Matter of fact, one of the ways I like to put it to myself often is, there's things in your life that are begging sometimes to die. Some things literally have died, and some things are dying as we speak. And I think oftentimes we reject it. We don't accept reality, maybe for a short period of time, maybe for a long period of time. And I don't think we are punished for not moving on. I think what happens is we unfortunately reap the consequences of holding on to things that have already been asking to be let go of. It doesn't always sound like somebody in your life that needs to kick rocks. It's not like they're always coming to you saying, hey, you should let me go, I'm bad for you. It's as they keep doing things that are obviously bad for you, it's your job to recognize that and take it as a signal to allowing it to be painful enough, or recognizing how painful or uncomfortable or let's say toxic, although I reluctantly use that word, that we need to recognize it so that we can let it go and move on. So it doesn't have to be somebody saying, hey, I'm no longer good for you, you should let me go. It's, you have to recognize it yourself and move on. And I think that's very, very difficult for people. So you will be punished, unfortunately, for the consequences of holding on to things that are begging to die. And I also think, in conjunction with that, you will not be rewarded. We will not reap the benefits, the positive benefits of, let's say, I don't want to use the word chasing. You won't reap the benefits of pursuing that in which you admire in your life. And you can't pursue that in which you admire if you're so busy hanging on to things that want to expire. I didn't mean to rhyme, but that works really well. I think oftentimes that's exactly what we do. We're too busy hanging on over here with this hand to things that have already died, sometimes, respectfully speaking, so that we can't take the other hand and reach for things that keep calling us. Matter of fact, I think that's where the unfortunate, the negativity comes from, is that song and dance. If you play that for too long, then you're going to find yourself too far along in life, having never taken the action you knew you should have to get to where you were meant to be. And I think it's a very difficult pill to swallow, especially as you get older. That regret, if you've ever seen it in somebody's face, is pretty tough. Well, in today's world, it's maybe a little different because everybody's so distracted that you don't see the regret as much because it's easy just to feel good about it and medicate with whatever devices or substances you want. Casey says, I've started to love myself a lot more just in the last year. I definitely needed to exercise self-care, and it feels amazing. That's good. That's something you should always do. I would be interested if you would put it in the comments what exactly you mean by self-care. Like if you were to whittle it down to like the nuts and bolts of it, like give me a couple things that you mean by in regards to that. It'd be interesting. Amanda's on here. Thanks for joining us, Amanda. Keeping it lively. All right, let's keep going down here. Of course, as usual, missing out some of the comments a little behind. Ian says grief causes a rebirth in itself. You're right about that to an extent because you can't be the same again. I call it initiation. When you experience something traumatic, you are now initiated to a realm, to a dimension that maybe others at this point haven't been yet and maybe never will. I often try to wonder, maybe sounds useless to some, but I've often tried to wonder, like, who is the person on this planet who suffered the most, whether it's in history or current, like who's suffering the most? And just as a thought experiment, like, how do you weigh that out? How do you measure that? Because you could say scenario wise, what would be the worst? I think would be different. Everybody would describe it as different. But for the most part, I think life in general is pretty tough. So when you're initiated, I call it, when you experience trauma or suffering, it is an opportunity, not just for you to be reborn, but you never get to go back. You never get to be the same again. So you are technically becoming something new, which is essentially a death onto your old self. And I think that's what grief and that's what trauma is. You thought it was one way in your life, and maybe it was, and it got ripped out from under you. And what you're really dealing with after that stage, the grief part of it, people call it, is the acceptance that things aren't the way they used to be. And that's, I think, oftentimes the hardest part. And that could be for many reasons. Your job, relationship, your body, your mind, your youth, whatever. Brody says, I need a book of your dad's teaching / sayings. I think that would actually be awesome. As I was reading that, the first thing I thought was shit in one hand and shit in one hand and wish in the other and see which one fills up faster. I thought that was interesting. And he used to go like this with his hand and tell me, he's like, is this your shit? And I would look at him crazy. And he's like, is this your shit? And I'm like, what is he talking about? And as I got older, I understood what he meant, which is, if it's not your shit, let it go. Like, why would you be holding somebody else's shit in your life? You're oftentimes involving yourself in things that have nothing to do with you and getting way too involved in things that are just not important. There we go. Rochelle's got it right for sure. Let's see. A little late. Okay. Rochelle says, I'll chime in for the self-care bullet points. Making time for yourself when you are a caregiver of so many others, listening to your gut and creating boundaries and non-negotiables. That's good. I like the listening to your gut and creating boundaries and non-negotiables. But when you say making time for yourself, would you literally mean making time for yourself? Like time solo, time completely on your own, or is it time, like, I don't know exactly what you mean by that. I guess that would be a small detail, but an important one. Lenore said, oh my goodness, I was just telling my friend about that. The way it is how I was told to me. Maybe I got that wrong. You can't play the devil's playground and expect to receive blessings from God. And I dig that. That's true. 100%. It's interesting. That's a good quote. I don't know where that came from, but I like that. Can't play in the devil's playground and expect to receive blessings from God. What's interesting is people often will try. We do it with the food we eat, the substances we partake in, the entertainment that we watch, with the people we spend our time with, the activities we that we engage in, we oftentimes don't associate it with the outcome. And I think that's because it seems okay. It's like, hey, we're just hanging out, right? We're just hanging out. We're having a barbecue. We're having a couple drinks with friends. It's just the weekend. It's the weekend. I worked hard all week. But how many times you find yourself in a scenario where you're just doing the same old shit over and over? And for some people, maybe that's okay. That feels like a fulfilling life. And for others, it doesn't. Which actually leads me to one of the main points of the idea of being reborn. It doesn't have to be one time in your life or, all the time, although there's little versions of it, like going to sleep and waking up and having a new day, and major versions where you experience some sort of trauma or loss. But then there's also ones where you can do intentionally. Like, for example, I think milestones are important. I think gracefully aging and allowing yourself to, for example, every year, something I do is I set standards for myself. So something I want to work on, like, for example, years ago, something I wanted to work on was my belief within myself. I actually had noticed that the more I believed in myself, the better off my life became. So I set out for a year to this was literally my goal, was to develop a sickening belief in myself that I was like the chosen one, that I was special. And I worked on a whole year, like allowing myself to almost what some people definitely have considered, I've even called arrogant for, which I was totally happy with because I worked really hard to be considered that way. Although she was wrong about me being arrogant, I wasn't. But the fact that she considered me that was cool, because before that I was so always trying to be a nice guy and try to be timid and tame. And for a year I worked on building a sickening belief within myself that I could do just about anything. And like this power within me welled up, and it changed the course of my life forever. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. And I can tell you right now that it really helped me. And you can imagine the kind of response I got from some people. Maybe not everybody, but some people. It definitely wasn't always well received. Like if you change, for example, right now, a good example, if you were to just change your wardrobe completely, all of a sudden you just go outside and you completely change your style. Let's say you adopt something completely out of the ordinary for your lifestyle. Would people notice it? And do you think it would be necessarily positive? Or do you think that people would be a little resistant to accepting it? Or at least, even if no harm, no foul kind of attitude was towards it, they at least were poking enough fun at it to, give you a loud and clear signal that this change is noticeable. And oftentimes we take that as being a negative signal, and sometimes it is. So we don't continue. Like just go out tomorrow and, wear something entirely different, whatever it may be, and just see how people respond to you. It's going to quickly make you want to go back to your comfort. And unfortunately, that's not where transformation happens. So Rochelle was saying that making time to do the things that make you happy. Mine are quiet time to write, time to reflect, time to practice beauty regimens, time to plan the things I want to happen in my future. That's cool. I definitely like to put aside, similar to that I like to put aside time. I usually go every week, at least an hour, every month, at least a day, and every year, at least a week, if not more, or weeks that add up to about a month a year, set aside just for myself to reflect and to also visualize, so that I can very intentionally visualize what it is I want. This year I've been so preoccupied, which is no excuse, just an explanation. I fully accept that it's my fault that I've been completely preoccupied with so many things that I've allowed myself to slip on that. And I've noticed how important it is for me. Well, I've always known for a very long time how important it is to write out the things in which you would like to receive, so that you can make them as real as possible, because otherwise it's too easy to forget and to get distracted. And I have not done that this year. This is one of the first years in a long time I haven't, and I've been noticing something missing. So it's very remarkable how how tangible it is to physically write down what it is you're working on, what it is you want, what it is your what are your ambitions, what are you trying to squeeze out of this life, what are you trying to make happen or be part of. And if it's not written down, it's like it's an old saying that says if it's not written down, it's not real. And I've definitely something I need to work on this year. But taking that time out for yourself to do so is very important. Christy said, Cute guy at Home Depot noticed my cute dress. It was nice. Compliments are always good. I think people are pretty bad at compliments most of the time, especially in public because we're so afraid of how somebody might receive it, or at least we're even afraid of feeling like we get rejected by saying something nice to somebody. It doesn't always work out the way we want on either end, but I still think it's usually always a good thing to do. Brody says, everything is trivial as long as the people I care about are okay. It's a good day. Rochelle says, I always look different. So, and you're probably right too. It's a little different for women because women do definitely dress up and have quite a bit more style and accessories than most men. Most men are pretty simple. But I can tell you right now, if I tried to change what I wear, if one day I'm wearing a suit, the next day I'm wearing cut off Dickies and skate shoes. The day after that, I'm wearing a leather vest and jeans and boots. The day after that, I'm wearing a kilt, carrying a sword up a mountain with a backpack on. People notice. And usually the response is not necessarily an attack, but it's usually not very much of an encouraging response, to be honest with you. Most people are, they want you to go back to your shell. And I don't know if you guys experience that a lot, but I've definitely noticed that a lot growing up. And even still to this day. Ian says, people will judge you even for positive changes you make for yourself. It's interesting you say that because, I don't think whether it's positive or negative, it really matters. I think in regards to how people judge you, they're going to no matter what. There's always going to be people doing that. But what's interesting is that when you do negative things, you're typically going to find people judging you in hopes that you're maybe, to some degree, going to figure out the right path. And if you're on the right path and doing positive changes, the people usually judging you on that end are usually the people that are negative and don't want you to succeed because they themselves are not, and they know it. And they might not know clearly, but they definitely feel it somewhere deep inside, so they got to attack you. Christy, that's awesome. He asked permission to even speak to me. It was nice. It's funny. I have a feeling that one of the reasons why a lot of people aren't in relationships anymore, which I've been reading this book recently. It talks a lot about the statistics, but also where it's stemming from, or at least estimations of where these lack of relationships people are having are stemming from. Like, for example, so many people in today's modern world are not in committed relationships. They're not having kids. Like 50% of women in the next 10 years are going to be childless and relationshipless, which is a crazy number. It's unprecedented. And so where this is, I think, a lot of times coming from is this such a encouragement for soft, sterile environments that we're all in. Everybody be nice, no bullies, everybody be good, everybody, shake hands and play nice. That doesn't always get us, that doesn't always move us ahead. And I'm not saying it's always a bad thing, but I think too much of it can be a bad thing. And I think we're in a very sterile environment today, emotionally and spiritually. So I think less people are having those relationships. And it's interesting because of it, I think a lot of people are not engaging anymore, especially in public. I've noticed too, as time has gone on with social media, it's way more, look at me on social media, talk to me on social media, share with me there. Please don't do it in public because public is real and it's harder, it's scarier. It's real life, right? It's like keyboard warriors. They're tough behind a keyboard, or call them steering wheel warriors. Behind a steering wheel and behind a keyboard, people are so tough, right? And I think the same thing's happening behind the keyboard with our relationships. Everybody's beautiful and feels good about who they are when they get to filter through the pictures and show you what they want, not what you see. And in real life, you really don't always have that option. I mean, makeup helps, but it still, people are totally different when you're in person. And thank you, Rochelle. I appreciate that. Isabel's graduation was amazing. She looked wonderful, and we had a really amazing day. She enjoyed it. I definitely did that day right for her. Casey says, I'm always wearing a new look. They typically match my attitude for the day. And like I said, you'll find, like, for example, I bought my first pair of cowboy boots in probably in the last 2 decades. And it was interesting how many people had a negative thing to say about it. And then I bought a really nice pair of dress shoes, which I've never owned, brown leather dress shoes. And I can't tell you how many people, I don't want to say it was necessarily negative, but wasn't necessarily very encouraging. I wear a kilt walking up a mountain, and I can tell you right now, you get a lot of feedback in a not so positive way. People are almost kind of not embarrassed, but I don't know really how to describe it other than kind of embarrassed, I guess, or more unaccepting of it, if you will. Switched it up to some camouflage can of coffee tonight instead of some whiskey and a cigar. I wasn't in the mood, and so I switched it up a little. Kim says, I don't think all the comments about the changes you are making are an attack or a wish for you to return to a different look. It could be an observation. You're exactly right, Kim. There's a lot of people that feel that way. But still, it's very much a poke, whether people like it or not. It always comes across as unaccepting. It's like, hey, look, this person's changing. All of a sudden he thinks he's different. I get that a lot, and I'm fine with it because it's just it's a good notice that I am changing, because that's actually something that's important to me, is to keep evolving, to keep dying to my old self so I could be born anew and letting that go. Matter of fact, one of my big goals this year, the thing that I'm working on this year specifically, is allowing myself to receive other people's input and opinions, because obviously that's going to happen. But I'm allowing myself to receive it and not have an emotional response. Just take it as simply information instead of taking it personal. It's very freeing to do so. So sometimes I actually encourage people to tell me how they really feel, because it helps me get the practice in. Thank you, Lenore. I appreciate that. Ian says, if they say something about the kilt, just use your Scottish accent. Question their judgment. I met a girl, this is quite interesting, a lady that I was tattooing recently actually told me she hates accents, especially Scottish, and I couldn't believe she said it. It was quite remarkable. So I'm going to share with you guys and gals something else that I also found. Let's see here if I can bring it up. I really like this one. This one's obviously old. This is going to be the Buddha, and something that I remember hearing years and years ago. I thought it was quite interesting because it's just fun to ponder on, but regarding the topic that we're on to today, this actually makes a lot of sense. And regarding what I just said about, it's like practice. Okay, I got a lot of apprentices in the tattoo shop that I'm trying to teach, my ways, my skills, and something every single apprentice have to bring up every time I'm teaching somebody new, regardless of where they're at in their career or how old they are or where they come from. I'm always having to point out that part of your path as a professional, especially as an artist, and working for yourself, and in the tattoo industry, is growing thick skin. And I think it's very interesting that it's very hard for people to accept, because they want the world to be different instead of for them to be stronger. And I often have to teach them that you're going to have to learn.
I found this on the web for what is very hard for people to accept because
I hate when Siri pops up. So oftentimes I have to explain to them that part of your training as a professional is going to be accepting, not necessarily, definitely don't be a doormat. Don't be somebody's punching bag. But you're going to have to accept that things are going to be tough, and that's a good thing, and use it as training. And usually when you put it that way, they respond pretty well to it, to be honest with you. Okay, so we're going to bring up this screen here. So this is one of my favorite ones. I've definitely read this years and years ago, and I love it. Pain is certain, suffering is optional. Pain is 100% certain. And it's also the loudest signal. Pain is the loudest signal, in my opinion, of information and truth. Pain doesn't fucking lie. That's for sure. Pain is a very loud and clear signal of information, which is something you should definitely pay attention to. Of course, you really can't ignore it, but the suffering part, obviously, in this quote saying is optional. I think is, again, something I've had to learn the hard way years and years ago, where I realized, okay, pain is part of life, but the suffering part is a choice. And I think, again, that's bringing that up. Just reminds me of all the times in my life that I've had to allow myself to be reborn, whether it's to an old idea, to an old habit, to an old friend, to an old lifestyle of some sort. Sometimes literally to a location. You have to let those things go. Let's see here. Appreciate that. Yes, Ian, you're right. I definitely can't let them watch our live streams because we oftentimes slip into the old accents, and I can't avoid them. So we're gonna have to make sure these people that don't like Scottish accents don't watch our content. That's for sure. Let's see here. Yeah, I know. I don't know if Siri was super loud on your guys' end, but she wasn't mine. I should just turn her off. I actually don't know how. I'm sure it's a setting somewhere. I've got to look into it. She pops up way, way too much. Sometimes she pops up because of a video playing in another room and she hears it, and it's weird. So Rochelle's saying, even when my son passed, I chose to make him proud, which didn't allow me to suffer. The pain was there, the suffering was not. It's interesting. It's very, very interesting what we can do if we don't allow ourselves to unnecessarily suffer and just let the pain be what it is and move on from there. Something I've, again, struggled with tremendously in the past and apparently had to learn the hard way. Kim says, pain is temporary, pride is forever. Work hard, work through the pain, and you'll feel pride in the journey. Pride's an interesting thing. It's very dangerous, actually. To be proud is one thing, but to have pride is a little different. So it's a slippery slope there. I think I like to think of it as, although I'm not discounting what you're saying, but saying pain is temporary, pride is forever. I think pain is temporary. Thankfulness is forever, I would say. Meaning, I'm much more inclined to try my best to be grateful for something than I am to feel pride for it. Whether it's not opportunity or something you've achieved or accomplished. Natalie says, on relationships topic, people have become complacent and lazy and don't want to put in the time to get to know one another. Sadly, we live in an instant gratification throwaway society, in my opinion. Well, I think that you're right. It's definitely a correct observation. I would say it's less probably of an opinion and definitely more of an observation. That's definitely true, for sure. We've been quite trained. What's interesting about that is what's causing it. So you're saying people have become complacent and lazy and don't put in the time to get to know one another. What's the root cause of that? And like where's that coming from, right? I would assume that without technology, or should I say, without modern technology, without the digital world coming in, things were different and probably would have remained different had it not stepped in. So that would probably be the culprit. So, if you guys have any input on that, that'd be interesting because I do think that in terms of relationships, whether it's personal or professional, I think it's definitely changed dramatically over the years. I feel like I've been watching it change like really dramatically over the last probably 10 years. Before that, I think it was kind of a slow hit because I think social media was still pretty turtle-esque in its speed. So I think the culprit's got to be some of the social media issues. Exactly what you said. People need to get their heads out of the phones. Social media, exactly. It's so weird though because like, do you really see an end to it? Do you see an end to? Do you see an end to that? I don't think so. I think we're the last of it. I think I'm not trying to be, doomsday-ish. I'm just saying in terms of reality. To me, doomsday mentality is today there's things maybe pointing to, say some traumatic end of things, whether it be a country or a way of life or the world or the universe or the planet. It's kind of a far-fetched, but to be realistic and to consume data that's realistic of today, or to take in that data and to face it and accept it, and then see it for its, what trajectory we're on regarding it. I think it's accurate. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. I think it's safe to say we're going to continue doing it. Like the majority of relationships, for example, all start online. That's the majority of relationships now. And then not only is it the majority of relationships, it's also the majority of information consumed, right? We're not learning from people anymore as much as we're learning online. And that it can have its own set of issues. You could be learning all kinds of things and we can get so wrapped up in information that we never physically do anything. And I think that we become very complacent there as well, because we get so much information that we forget that there's action to take as well. Casey, I totally agree with what you're saying. That believe that working through the pain instead of dwelling on it is very rewarding. Of course it is, because that's what you're supposed to do. Whether there's pain or not, and whether there's suffering or not, you're still supposed to stay on track. And that's how you get rewards. As soon as you get off track, that's when you start to suffer. It's always obvious, but important to point out that if you go to the gym to try to get in shape and feel good about your body, do you just quit and say, I'm there? As soon as your bank account reflects an amount of money that makes you feel good about your hard work, do you just stop and say, hey, look, I've arrived? When you get in a relationship and it's exactly where you'd like it to be and you found that person, it's really good. And then when it changes and it's not changed in the way in which you expected or like or prefer, now all of a sudden, it's maybe taking a turn for the worst or for the best. But a lot of times we struggle with accepting those things. But it's a constant journey. You got to stay on the path. If you fall off the path, well, then you get the rewards of exactly that. Let those things slip and see how you will be, what consequences will come your way. So Natalie's saying, plus a society of selfishness instead of service. And sadly, no, I don't see an end to it, but I try my best to be in this world, but not of this world. That's a good point to make regarding that, because with the relationships and stuff that people are, let's say, not getting into today, the lack of depth as well. Pardon my French, but I've always thought, at least for the last 20-ish years, that humans, since social media, since the digital universe has been developed, I think we've reduced ourselves down essentially to our genitals, to be honest with you. I think that's pretty much all we want each other for, and then it's move on. And maybe not necessarily, I'm 40, maybe some of you that are even my age or older, we didn't necessarily grow up as in a society that was quite so throwaway or disposable. But in today's modern world, it's so throwaway and so disposable that I don't think these young people will know anything different. Yeah, you said so, plus a society of selfishness instead of service. So you can imagine a society of selfishness instead of service, what kind of people we would have to be a society of selfishness as opposed to service. Because, I think that's exactly, we're so wrapped up in how we feel about things that we read about or things we hear on the street. And human beings are so easily trapped in feelings that if you can throw things in front of them and give them a visceral reaction to it, and let's say 1% of the population in America, for example, has a certain radical ideology about some sort of, let's say, biology or science, and it gets purported through media that everybody has to face this issue, even though it's only 1% of the population. But now we have technology that allows us all to be exposed to this radical thinking, which gives us all this negative response to something we now have to put force on. We have to fight back. We have to push. And oftentimes, I think that's what leads to fanning the flames, is exactly that. And unfortunately, I think that technology is being weaponized against us in that way. I think it's making us less and less capable, less and less of a threat to the powers that be, if you will. Ian says, what happens to water when it becomes stagnant? It's undrinkable. That's interesting. Don't become undrinkable. That's very interesting. You know, and the crazy thing is, it's really simple. Like the problem, the answer to most of our problems is going to be simple, and it's universal, and it's timeless. It's not rocket science, and it's not hard to figure out, and it's nothing fucking new. Nothing we're dealing with is new. Nothing that the answers to our world's problems, to our life's problems, to our individual problems. This is nothing new. There's nothing new about any of this. There's nothing new to find out and to figure out. The stuff's already been done. If anything, there's a big trick on us that's just trying to play, with our minds that makes us think we have to get some new information, right? That we're waiting for the next new bit of information, like who did this, or what is the truth about that, or what conspiracy is or isn't true. But the truth is, this stuff's all been figured out. The answers have already been, the way has already been paved for us. This is nothing definitely that's it's complicated. It's pretty fucking simple. If you take care of your body, you take care of your mind, what do you feed your body every single day? It's going to determine the quality of your physical health and your experience with this gift of life you've been given. What do you feed yourself spiritually every day? Are you watching TV? Are you watching social media? Being entertained by mindless shit just because I'll be the first one to tell you that time to time I'll get caught watching a video that is useless, but it feels good because it strokes the sort of egotistical part of your mind that says, see, I'm right. I was right about this. And look at that person doing the gotcha moment. It's so poisonous. It's so useless. It doesn't do anything for you. My last stream, I think one of the quotes I'd brought up was, does it grow corn? And it's a very basic, unflattering way of saying, is there any use to this? And I think we get caught up way too much in exactly that, is the uselessness of everything we're being fed today. So what are you feeding your body? You're going to get the consequences of that. What are you feeding your mind? You're going to receive the consequences of that. If you're watching TV and being lethargic and sitting around doing fucking nothing and scrolling the internet, what kind of person would you be? Just like if you were laying around just eating crap physically every day for 10, 15, 20 plus years, what kind of person do you think you're actually going to be? What are you going to be capable of? Very little. Let's say that your physical performance, if you take care of yourself, will be much different than if you don't. I think the same is true with your mind. Your mental performance is going to be so different depending on what you're feeding it over the next couple of years, 20, 30 plus years. Think about what you won't be able to do. The hard part about the mind is you can't see it like you can see the body. So it's easy to get trapped in that. Casey says, there are so many of us youngins, I love that word, that idolize truly, because by the way, I used to be considered one, if you didn't know. There are so many of us youngins that idolize truly amazing relationships, those that have some and have those same intentions too. I'd love to have a connection with someone so strong. Okay, so it is harder today than ever before, for sure. There's no doubt in my mind there. One of the good things about today, I would say it's good and it's bad. The good thing is there's nothing been more available today than ever before. Now, I shouldn't say it. There's no relationship status, if you will, that can't be attained today any more or less than it has been in the past. There just might not be, it's just as possible, that's a good way to put it, to clarify. It's just as possible to find the kind of relationships you want in your life as ever before. It's just not as probable, right? It still can exist, but it's not as highly likely to happen. The odds in that sense are not in our favor today. Everybody's, like I said, they're getting their quick fixes online. They're mentally and spiritually becoming poisoned, and they're becoming lethargic and lazy. Their mind and their spirit and their body has become fat and out of shape, if you will, and its performance is poor. And that's exactly what's happening to us. Everybody can accept that if you're massively overweight, you're probably not walking up a mountain. You're definitely not running. You're most likely not doing physical activities a lot of other people enjoy. I mean, sometimes it might even be as simple as walking. You might not get to enjoy what that feels like, right? When your heart starts to beat a little, you get a little bit of sweat going on. You're experiencing a nice park or somewhere outside, maybe even a hike or something, some light breeze and a brisk walk. The same thing is going to be true with your mind and your body. If you're not taking care of it, you're not going to be able to experience those riches. It's not going to happen. It's not possible. I think a lot of people have the sort of a misnomer that, your body and your mind and your spirit are different, right? Don't take care of the body is one thing, but let's at least spiritually and mentally be strong. I don't think that's how it works. It's a good one, Rochelle. One of her favorite quotes is, "We are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are just information that keep purporting itself." It's like a thought is really just a reoccurring mental daydream. That's it. That's all it is. Christy brings up a good point. She says, "I think it's harder today because we aren't young and carefree, cautious, to a fault maybe, question mark." She's saying, "I think it's harder today because we aren't young and carefree." I don't exactly know what you mean by it's harder today. What you mean is like in terms of relationships, that we're not as carefree and we're more cautious. I don't think we're necessarily more cautious today than ever before. I think we're just more aware and exposed to more things than anybody ever has that we've ever seen historically. Today, you can say everybody that's watching this right now, everybody who's on here has been exposed to more things than anybody else in the history of the world. I mean, there's nobody who's been exposed to more distractions, entertainment, people, information, whether it's good, whether it's bad, than us today. Nobody has had to deal with that so far as we see historically through human history. It's us that have to deal with this now, so it's going to raise its own set of problems for sure. Casey says, "Got my dad here watching with me." That's awesome. Casey, since that's true, you should give us one of your father's quotes, or even a dad joke, if you will. Give us a dad joke and jump in here and let's get this party started. I love dad jokes. I don't care what anybody says. Rochelle says, "When you can detach the mind from the soul, you can learn how loud and wrong your thoughts can be." That's 100% true. Definitely. It's really important to know that your thoughts are just reoccurring daydreams, really. It's just repetitive information that can, if you let it, but doesn't have to dictate the outcome of your life, 100%. So I'm going to touch on that for a minute because you said when you can detach the mind from the soul, you can learn how loud and wrong your thoughts can be. What I think is important is to, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of this before, but you really have to check yourself and inventory your internal dialogue. Like, it's really, really important. I realized, by the way, this whole episode I've been sitting off to the corner a little. See if I'm centered now. Yeah, that looks good. Where were you guys on that? Let me know. Jeez. The background looks great today, by the way, if I must say so myself, which I do say so myself. So touching on that with detaching your mind from the soul, I think it is loud and clear that thinking can get so loud and seem so true and so real that people get stunned by it. Whereas if you can sift through the thinking, or at least quiet it down enough to see past it, I think that's when you're liberated, if you will. At least that seems to be true for me. I'll often have to inventory my thoughts in the morning where I'm not maybe feeling good. My internal dialogue is loud, and it always has been. And so I have to be very, very conscious. It's not only loud, but I'm very impressionable by it. And maybe that's pretty common, but I know for me, I have to be really careful not to let that creep into my whole day, because sometimes it will. Have you ever had a dream, for example? Have you ever had a dream that was so real and so emotional that it really affected your whole day, right? Like you wake up and it wasn't real and you know it wasn't real, but it's still like putting you in a mood, whether good or bad. It's putting you in a mood, even though it wasn't actually real. I think our thoughts are exactly the same thing that has that effect on us all the time. So you have to be very, very careful with that. So Casey, apparently your dad's quote is also Sheldon, my best friend Sheldon's favorite quote, which is, he says, don't sweat the petty shit, pet the sweaty shit. That's awesome. Rochelle says it really does look good back there. Love the lighting. Yeah, I fucking enjoy it. This set is awesome. I've actually been working on it a lot lately. Just like kind of transformed one of our rooms in here, and it really serves a great purpose. And in the future, utilizing this place is going to be a lot of fun. It already has been fun. It's fun as we speak. This is great because I get to do a lot of creative stuff in this place, and soon to come, which I've promised you guys already. I have quite a few people I'm booking with right now to get on the show, and I can promise you, I'm not going to say any names, but I can promise you, most of you, or at least some of you, definitely have heard of these people. It's a local famous, if you will, or just well-known people, some not local, that are agreeing to get on the show, and we're actually in the process of scheduling it now. It'd probably be after the next couple of months because most of these people are very busy, but they have agreed. Quite a few very interesting, talented, amazing people, wonderful people have agreed to being on the show. So it's going to be a lot of fun to bring them to you guys and do what we did in the past, where we can use more of the podcast setup and chairs, and have a real conversation between two people, between two humans. That's awesome. Dad joke. Did you hear about the population of Ireland? It's Dublin. I heard a dad joke on here once recently that said, teacher asked me if I could name a country. Let's see, how did it go? I'm going to say it so wrong. Oh man, I totally fucking lost it. It'll come back to me. Name me a country without there was a certain letter in it. Oh my gosh, I'm totally brain farting. Shouldn't have brought it up. Erase that. Let's rewind back 30 seconds. Christy says, what did one saggy boob say to the other saggy boob? We better get some support in here or people are going to think we're nuts. It's one of my favorites. I like that one. Sorry to hear that, Lenore, but you know what I'm talking about when I say these things, that it's very difficult when you have a dream that affects the rest of your day, especially nightmares. Sometimes they're good dreams, sometimes they're bad, but they affect your mental state throughout the day. And I think the same thing can happen with our repetitive thinking. I've actually read in a book once that states that thinking is the new addiction. People are addicted to thinking. They're addicted to information. They're addicted to new news. They're addicted to new issues. They love when an issue gets thrown in your face that you have a visceral reaction to, right? As a human, you love when you look at a screen or you listen to something auditorily or both, and you get information that gets you riled up, right? People often love to, and no doubt it's how we react to things, but people love to have a reaction. And I really think it's being weaponized against us today, to causing us to just be really lethargic human beings and not as effective as we used to be. Melissa's on here. Thanks for being on here, Melissa. She's saying, finally got to tune in again. Hello, everyone. So everybody can say hello to Melissa. Welcome her here to the chat, to the stream, to the comments section. Thanks for getting in there. Since we're in the comments section and we're all getting in here, I must say that if anybody knows Linda, if anybody's seen Linda, and Linda, if you're out there anywhere, if you're listening, Linda, I need you to know, I'm thinking about you. You're my favorite. You'll always be my favorite, and I fucking love you. Linda's real. I've already proved it. Don't ask me to do it again. I've already shown everybody Linda, so you can just take my word for it if you didn't get us here. That's not my fault, that's yours. Okay. Ian says, the first man who climbed Mount Everest was asked about how he felt with his accomplishments. His answer was, see the mountain over there? I want to climb that now. There's always more cliffs. Okay, interesting. Does anybody know, since you brought that up, does anybody know what was the tallest mountain in the world before they discovered Mount Everest? See if you guys can answer it. What was the tallest mountain in the world before they discovered Mount Everest? And by the way, Ian, thanks for the flags. Natalie, I'll be honest with you. I'm guessing that's a dog. I'm not really exactly sure how to read that. But I'm assuming it's a great joke. Okay. Amanda, thanks for joining us, of course. As always, usually a little more conversive, but tonight I'll give you a pass. I get it. It's a little bit more of a sort of calm evening. No cigar, no whiskey, no spice. Tonight's a little deeper, a little more serious. Danbury is on here saying, hey guys, made it. Thanks for being here. Christy is answering to the question of what was the tallest mountain in the world before they discovered Mount Everest. She's saying Kilimanjaro, ? No, Kilimanjaro is not very big. It's actually a pretty small mountain in comparison. So no, that's definitely not the answer. Casey's saying K2. K2, I actually am not exactly sure which one K2 is. I almost want to say that was Alaska. I could be totally wrong, but no, you're wrong. Let's see. My dad said, oh, okay, let's see which one. Unless that is another name for, let's see. I could be wrong. I'm just going to look it up. So before I call you out, before I give you guys the right answer. Oh, it's in Asia. Okay. Well, so is Mount Everest, right? So K2 is the highest mountain. Okay. So it is K2. You are actually right, technically. I thought maybe that was the right name. I remember there was a ski brand named K2. That's what I was thinking. So technically, Casey is right. K2 was the tallest mountain in the world before they discovered Mount Everest. I don't know. If your dad said that, I'm not sure if you know what it means or if you guys are catching the drift. So let's see if anybody catches on to the I guess satire there. All right. So it looks like 1 hour in. It feels like I've been on here for 20 minutes as usual. If you guys just made it on here, something I'll share with you real quick and bring up for you, which is the sort of topic for the night. To do this a little different, usually I ask a question, or you guys ask questions and I answer it for the night. I just wanted to do something a little differently today. So this was what I brought up earlier. Each night when I go to sleep, I die, and the next morning when I wake, I am reborn. How do you guys interpret that in a simple way? What are your guys' thoughts on this? So this has been kind of the conversation for the night, for the evening. And dad jokes. What's up with that? I haven't been getting a lot of dad jokes lately, and I'll be honest, I definitely miss them. So if you guys have ever experienced, going back to that quote, if you guys have ever experienced a rebirth, something I like to point out that I know gets confused often, especially when you're a teenager. I think one of the biggest rebirths you'll ever have is going from a child to an adult. I think it's very confusing for people, especially in today's world. I think it's very confusing for people. It's not very clear what's happening, and I think people get lost somewhere between the ages of 12, 13 to 18, 19. There was a period in young people's lives, I know for sure with a bunch of boys, especially the guys I grew up with, and even today, a bunch of the young men I know. It's very confusing when they go through this stage of development where they, the rebirth is asking to happen, the old is asking to die, and the new is asking to be born. And some people don't know how to properly translate that in their actual lives, and it comes across as being, the new word for it is deleted. But people often want to, erase themselves from the face of the earth, or at least ponder what that means in their own personal lives, because they're misunderstanding the signal coming in, that you're supposed to let the old go. You're supposed to stop swinging off mama's, feeder and move on. And you're supposed to put your own feet on the ground and get going. And it's very difficult in today's world because we're so coddled and we're so soft and so, protected, if you will, mentally and emotionally, that I think it's hard for people to understand what to do there. I think in the past it was clearer because the answers were go to work, be useful, learn a skill. You have a place in this world. It needs you, whether it's in the military, in the war, on the farm, on the ranch. To live, we need your helping hand. Where today it's a lot more comfortable, and I think it's harder for people to translate that information. I know it's very difficult for people today, especially the younger people. Danbury, I like that one. That's good. Natalie says each new day brings an opportunity for change and a new direction. It does, and I think it's if growing up, I always thought people could just like dramatically change. Right? You meet someone who's stuck in a rut. I'm not talking about temporary things like sometimes people go down a bad path for a while, but I mean like actual behavioral changes. I think, man, I really think people are who they are by a very early age, and the trick is, if anything, is to evaluate and take inventory what it is that you are. You're passionate, you're artistic, you're driven, you're caring, you're giving, you're loving, you're whatever it is you are. It's very you do really good to recognize that as soon as possible, not just for yourself, but also in others, especially if you're a leader, whether you're a parent or a teacher or in a leadership position in some way in life, or a role model, which really all of us are in some way. That it's really important to look at others the same way, to understand who they really are. Because if you want change to happen, it's got to be facilitated. It's really difficult for people to change who they are. I'm not talking about, again, the short bursts of bad or temporary behaviors, but I think as an individual, it's really hard for people. Ian apparently is going to the gym. So good night, ladies and Josh. Ian, there's not just ladies on here. There's more than just ladies, right? For all the dudes watching, you guys can chime in and say what's up, since you're scared to do so. You see all the girls and you're like, I'm not jumping in there. Don't be scared. Melissa says, I feel like you have to put your problems to rest and start fresh. Every day is a new opportunity for new possibilities. It's very good to say that, and it's very easy to say for someone who maybe has been used to doing that. I think it's really difficult for people who are starting that journey, whether they're young or they're just starting to kind of understand that in their lives. I think it's very difficult for people to say, to let my problems go and start fresh every day. But it's good to practice, it's good to start. So start now, so you can make your lives better as it goes. But I think, changing behavior, that's the hardest part. There's so many things psychologically that are deep rooted in us by the time we're 4, 5, 6 years old. Meaning, if you have or haven't learned a certain thing or a certain behavior, or a certain skill set, if you will, like how to be social, how to socialize. If you haven't been taught that by a certain age, there's actually some psychological evidence that says you can't be taught it. As a matter of fact, whatever you're sort of indoctrinated with by a very early age, it is just going to be who you are forever, and there's not much you can do about it. I think we all like to think optimistically in those terms, but unfortunately, the reality is you are pretty much you're not a clean slate every day you wake up. But it's important to do your best to do exactly what you said, which is have a reset and start fresh every day, and just do your best there. Because for some people, that's just put one foot in front of the other, and for other people, it's mountains and mountains of success in whatever it is they embark on. Okay, so No Town Vandal said, when I go to sleep, I die of my sins and am reborn the next day free of sin. It's interesting. It's a very interesting concept. I've never heard it put that way. I've definitely heard, the biblical saying of sin, which is, that our sins will be pardoned of our sins once we physically die. And obviously that's what the story of Jesus really was to be that example for us, and also that sacrifice. And hello, thanks for being on here. Brody Jade says something that I hear a lot, very classically speaking, and I think it gets thrown around more of as a response, not an understanding, when she says, wake up and take on a new day with a new mindset, start fresh. Just, again, I'm not trying to pick on anybody here, but something that I see a lot that people really get fucking wrong is they think it's very easy for people to regurgitate and to say the right things, right? Like think positive, don't be negative, Wake up. It's a new day. Start fresh, or just let it go. There's all these easy things to respond. It's like a pre-programmed response to the world. But the question always comes down to like, okay, that's great to know, and this goes back to really all that we've been talking about tonight. It's great to be able to respond that way, but what do you do? Like you're saying, wake up and take on a new day with a new mindset. How? Like, how do you do that? How do you wake up with a new mindset? Like, that's a very general thing to say, but I think that it's more, I think it's simpler than that. I don't think you have to have a new mindset. I think you have to have a goal. You have to pick something to work towards. And that's the richest piece of information you'll ever get, is taking on that journey and then failing. Just when I hear that quote, which I hear a lot of people, I would say respectfully responding in that sort of way, I think what they miss is that, the richest stream of information is failure. And if you always fail to start, then you will never learn. And I think everybody gets that wrong for a certain amount of time in their life until they realize, like, if you have this desire to do something in your life that's monumental and you never do it, what you'll never find out is that it wasn't the thing. That was just a stepping stone. That was just the beginning of it. Yet you're going to live your whole life and regret that you didn't do it, only to never find out that it was never even the thing. It was just something. You just held on to something that you wish you would have done. You never did it, to never find out and discover that it was just the beginning of a whole journey. And what a waste in that sense. So I always think, like, what are the actionables? Like, what do you do? How do you wake up with a new mindset? What is a new mindset? Like a complete new mindset, or a new idea, or a new quote? Like, don't exactly know what that means. Lenore did it right. Let's go ahead and give her some love. The more flags, the merrier. Apparently it is actually Flag Day. I feel like I should have known that, but I didn't. But now we do. Yes. Melissa says it takes a long time to master. I'm 40 years old and finally getting a good grasp on it. And Dambria, you could be right. Only 2 dudes. Hopefully that changes in the future. Rochelle, don't forget, we need to set up a wine, whiskey, and wine tasting Wednesday, just to taste new things and discuss new topics, like would it be wise to hug a porcupine? Maybe, if that porcupine is de-porcupined and lonely and sad and depressed and down and abandoned, maybe we should hug him. And that does sound fun, and I would love to do that. I don't exactly know how to go about organizing it, but I think it'll be more up to your schedule than mine if we're going to have to get you down here. Casey might have to leave with a couple of porcupine sticks. Who knows? Amanda says failure gives us strength. That might be true. Strong personalities. Natalie, thanks for the flags. And Dambria, you're right. And I'm hoping to change that soon. I need some intellectual conversation in real life coming soon. And you guys will all be part of that here shortly. Maybe in the coming weeks, especially in the coming months as well. Dambria says, failure means growth. I don't know, man. Again, I feel like these are canned sayings. I'm not trying to discredit you guys, and I know it's just text, so it's hard to it's like really explain yourself. But growth comes from doing hard things. That's where growth comes from. Sometimes hard things are thrown at us, and we have to deal with it, and that makes us grow. But also, it takes a bit of sophistication to be able to purposefully put yourself in a position where you can grow in life. And again, it's not complicated. There's only a few areas of your life you need to grow, right? Emotionally, physically, spiritually. That's really all you need to do. And if you're not doing those things daily, something towards those things daily, then you're just not going to get You're not going to get the results you were meant to have. You know, and like I know a lot of people like to self-soothe with saying, you know, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. It's like, well, you are definitely right where you are. That's needless to say. But where you're supposed to be, I think there is a ideal in which we're supposed to try to aim for. And I think a lot of people, again, they self-soothe with things that feel good. And even sometimes like saying failure means growth. Maybe that's true, but doing hard things and doing what you know you're supposed to do, not what you feel like doing, that leads to massive amounts of growth. My life really doesn't change just by feeling good. I find that my life changes by, regardless of how I feel, I do good. And, you know, there's a quote that I read today. I don't actually know who it's from. It might be fairly new of a quote, but it says, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And I agree. I think that's very true. So maybe that's kind of what you mean by that quote. Heidi's on here. Thanks for joining us. She's saying starting a new day means I get to be a better today than I was yesterday. And that's true. It's an opportunity. That's the best way to see it. Starting a new day means I get to be better today than I was yesterday. That's why I love Mondays. To me, every day is Monday. Every day is a new week. Every day is a new chapter. Every day is a new, another moment for us to be able to take this gift that we've been given and rock and roll with it. And I think that that's really an important way to see it. I think a lot of us will do better in life by adopting that. So very, very good quote. Natalie says, yes, Amanda, and failure builds character. I've actually heard a quote before saying suffering builds character. It might have been a Buddha thing, actually. Justin's on here saying, I'm a dude. What's up, Justin? What's up, dude? Is there dudes on here just lurking in the background, waiting for the women to make way so we can jump up and say hello? Nice warm welcome for Justin on here. Thanks for joining us, Justin. Look at that. You're getting a lot of hellos. Man, I'm going to jump in the comment section so I can get some hellos. I'm kidding. I appreciate y'all being here. You know it. Danbury says, I also agree we need more guys in here. One day, for sure. I'm not really necessarily in control of who's here, but you know, whoever joins. Yeah, so Rochelle, we got to set that up. You should message me tonight so we can figure out a date, whether it's in the summer or maybe fall. Fall would probably be better. I wouldn't come down here in the summer if I were you. Okay, so maybe this is a really delayed response to what I was asking earlier, or I'm just really delayed. Sorry, guys. Try not to be. But Brody Jade's on here saying a refreshed self. Wake up and knit matter. Probably no matter. Wake up and no matter how you feel, you get your shoes on and start the day. You take everything you've learned from the prior day, just tackle the day, no matter what you're feeling. It's very true. In survival mode, just put one foot in front of the other. Sometimes it's just breathe. It's just the next breath. But that's like, you know, the lowest you get is survival mode. The highest you get is success, which is making sure that even though you feel good and everything's running right, that you're still taking inventory of your goals and hopes and dreams so that you can maintain, but also hopefully even, if not at least maintain, but grow. So tackling every day is important, but again, very relative to some people. You guys got to understand, you have to have a direction for sure. And I think it's, again, very hard for people to do because we're all so distracted. So much of our day is so distracted that we don't have those clear, focused goals, right? They're very vague. Like, I'm working on myself. I hear that all the time. When I'm tattooing people, I'll ask them, you know, when they say this, like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I'm meditating. I'm like, when and how? Like, for what? What are you meditating for? And I'll be honest with you, I hear a lot of canned responses. Which is probably why I'm kind of shooting down a lot of these responses from you guys, not to be rude, but just because my experience with these responses a lot of times is very vague. I get there's a communication barrier sometimes between people They maybe don't have the words to express, and I get that. But a lot of times I will hear, especially tattooing over the years, for 20 plus years, where someone will say, I'm working on me now. It's my time to do me and to make my life what I want it to be. And I always ask how, and I'm always kind of astonished on how little of practical wisdom there is buried in those responses. And it's sad to see, because it is a very, very much a gift to be here right now, to do what we're doing. Lenore says, how about having one Saturday show for people who don't live in Fresno? A Saturday show, I don't know why that would matter, where they live necessarily. Amanda says you have to water the seed for it to grow. 100%. Very basic stuff. Like I said, it's not complicated. Matter of fact, the overcomplicating of things is a tool that the enemy uses to defeat you, is overcomplication. Matter of fact, one of my favorite quotes is, complexity is the enemy of progress. And I believe so. I believe that's true. Damber says, if you don't fail, you won't learn. Yeah, you definitely cannot. If you're not failing, you're not trying anything. If you're not trying anything, you can't learn. And the path to learning something is literally failing your way there. That's 100% true. Now we're getting more complicated here. Lenore saying we could have a wine, whiskey, and tequila Saturday. Pretty soon it'll be wine, whiskey, tequila, and vodka. Am I wrong, Natalie? Tell me if I'm wrong. Rochelle says, I think the vague one-liner quotes are great. I think what you desire, Joshi, is for elaboration. Yes, but I'm not necessarily trying to, like I said, directly shooting people's one-liners out of the sky. What I'm saying is the vagueness of them often in my life's experience is that it's exactly that when people respond. I'm not saying anybody here is doing it. I'm just pointing out that it's very often people will say something, let's say a vague one-liner quote, and they'll say things like that in real life. Again, we're here digitally, I get it, but in real life, my experiences in the IRL out there, right, with real humans, even though technically this is real humans, this is a filtered version of who we are. This isn't the richest stream of human experience digitally. It's better in person. And in person, I find that so many people speak so vaguely and then have no actionables. They're just canned responses to saying, and I guess trying to appear. I don't think they do it consciously. They're not just trying to appear this good, wholesome person or well-rounded. I think they actually believe what they're saying, and they think that the quote and the statement itself is enough. I'm working on me. It's about positivity. It's about love and respect. But is it? Because I don't see them acting that way often. And then when I ask them exactly how it is they're practicing this, it's almost crickets after that. So I dig deeper with these conversations with people in person when they happen, which is often, because I would like to either help and facilitate with the idea of their lives being better, but also it helps me get clarity of what somebody means by this, right? Like I wouldn't know what I'm talking about right now, which is people's vague use of canned responses with no actionables, if I didn't dig deeper. And very often, I dig a little deeper and find that people are really just kind of spitting out canned responses, not actual, life experience. And again, that's not me picking on people's responses here, just pointing that out specifically. Apparently Justin needs to bring more dudes. I don't know if that's possible, but maybe there's more dudes in his proximity. Maybe they can all watch. I'm a little behind. Sorry, guys. I'm catching up right here. Amanda says, good night, everyone. I will most definitely catch the replay. This is a phenomenal live, and we appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Natalie says, why are you asking me about tequila? You know why. I do. I'll be honest. It's really cool. Like I feel like I could just sit here and watch you guys communicate amongst the chats. It's kind of cool. Amanda says that we're all phenomenal. Natalie says, Joshua, you absolutely have intent behind what you say and share with others. I get it could be a little obnoxious sometimes, especially when I'm tattooing someone for a long period of time or they're on my live stream for hours and hours and hours. I get that, but let me just say for a second that I feel often like a scientist experimenting to just mix this with this just to simply see what happened in a controlled environment so that it doesn't cause any sort of harm. And I often feel like I'm doing that in life, especially in person, where I'm just kind of, like if somebody tells me, hey, I'm working on myself right now and I'm trying to be a better person, I ask them how. I'm not trying to ask them how to point out their inefficiency or their lack of taking action or their, sort of dormant, canned versions of what they feel like they're supposed to say, their canned responses. What I'm doing is trying to dig deeper to learn, right? So I'm kind of just trying to, if sometimes literally fan the flames to find out what's burning inside and how big it can get. So a lot of times it's with good intentions to see if people actually want to take action. So for example, someone has a problem, you pose a solution. Do they always, they're clearly stating that there's a problem in their lives and you're giving them a solution. Do they often take that and they go, oh yeah, cool, I'm going to do it. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget and I'm going to go handle that right now. Do they take action like that? Of course not. That's not reality. Most people do not do this. For someone who would like to live their life like that and does live their life like that, it's very sometimes painful, but frustrating to see that. When somebody comes to you with a problem, you'll find, and many of you I'm sure know, probably all of you know this, people often aren't coming to you with their problems to be solved. You know this already. That's not why they're bringing up their problems. People aren't often bringing up, even inquiring about you and your life often other than for the simple reason of wanting to then respond. So I try to get past those barriers with people, especially sitting with them for hours as a tattoo artist has given me a lot of insight, like a scientist throwing this, material on this material and hopefully wearing enough protection, personal protection to be able to guard myself from whatever reaction may happen. I often feel like that's what I'm doing psychologically. And I appreciate that opportunity because I think I have an insight to people in a way that I think a lot of work environments don't foster that sort of experience. So I'm very thankful for it. Wow, D'Ambria, that's good. I have to read that one because I kind of like it, even though it's long. My uncle Artie is a stand-up comedian who loves to tell jokes about vegetables. But every time he gets up in front of a large crowd, Artie chokes. It's great. Rochelle saying, I say we because we have a lot of similarities. We are deep people. Small talk doesn't interest us and vague dialogue intrigues us to ask questions to dig a little deeper. I totally get it. Yeah, and that's all I mean is, and for people like us, I do think that it's very useful to point that out because I do think it's easy for us to live a life of saying the right things and brushing it off. I think totally unrelated to this subject to some degree, but when people say like a big one, which is, people ask, do you believe in God? And then somebody who goes to church and reads the Bible will say, yeah, I do. Oh, that's really cool. And then they're like, oh, you believe in God? Yeah, I go to church and I pray. And I get that satisfies some, but that conversation always sparks an interest in me because there's been thousands and thousands of proposed gods. And you could say, come on, Josh, it's 2023. They're not talking about Odin. And I would say, well, actually, you don't know that. And there's a lot of people who do actually believe in many different gods other than whatever one you suppose that everybody believes in. So I always take it goes way further, right? That's my creative mind just going off the deep end in that way. And people must enjoy it to some degree. I mean, at least a few of you do. I hope so. No Town says, D'Ambria, I got a couple vegetable jokes, but they're pretty corny. Nice, saw what you did there. Casey, that's disgusting. I'm not going to read that, but I like it. D'Ambria says, coming to the shop tomorrow. By the way, hope you're ready. Stop on in. open to the public. Natalie says, you being on guard shows intelligence because you share truth and light. That in itself brings attacks from Satan. Armor up daily. I agree. Totally. A lot of people want to be safe, of course, and I respect that. A lot of people want to be safe and they don't want to put themselves out there, right? They won't share their real true thoughts because you're then to be judged, right? When you speak truth or whatever your truth is, when you speak honestly, when you speak nakedly, if you will, you're going to be judged. Whereas if you speak vaguely, you're safe. And that's exactly what I mean, which is when people speak so vaguely, they are safe. And so therefore it's, they miss out on the depth and they start to be conditioned to remain that way. So they then respond to the world in a vague way. And I believe in the quote that says, if the way you do something is the way you do everything. So if you are satisfied with such vague notions, then unfortunately, I think it will lead you to also vague outcomes. So tying that back into the sort of reborn again, which is what the topic of tonight is, you cannot be reborn if you're not realistic, if you're not specific, and you're not dissecting to a deep level the reality in which you are already living in. You can't assess your life for what you think it was or what you think it is. You have to assess your life for what seems to be most close to true as possible. Meaning, you can't just look at your life and say, I think that this happened, therefore I am this. You got to be really sure. If you're going to make changes in your life, you got to make really sure. You don't want to abandon a good boat for just another, a potentially shittier boat. Just abandoning your ship for another ship. It's like saying, I used to believe in God, but I don't anymore. Some people think that shift in belief means that their experience says, I used to believe one thing, now I believe another, so I must be now right, which is exactly wrong to use that as a base for reality or for truth. What I mean by that is your feelings and the way you feel about something are no use to you if you're trying to evaluate what your life actually is. And the only way to make real, tangible, literal change in your life is to first accept and see and understand what your life actually is. If you can't do that, you're pretty much destined to, if you're going to keep jumping ships, you're going to be probably eventually, if you're not incredibly fucking lucky, jumping to similar, if not maybe worse ships. And I just think it's a dangerous thing to do. That's my 2 cents on that. I think if you want to be born again or reborn in your life and experience a death into your old ways and a rebirth to the new, you have to let things go that really sometimes even seem like they're deeply part of who you are. I experimented a lot with this when I was a kid. I remember one specific incident. I started going to church. I started doing a Bible study. I talked about it last live stream with a guy named Brian and his wife, a wonderful family, really, really heartfelt, warm people who definitely changed my life for the better forever by meeting these people. And doing a weekly Bible study with them was really important for me. It was really eye-opening. And I remember going home, and I'd lived in Portland, Oregon at the time, in that area. And I was very much into punk rock and metal music. And I had a bunch of really cool records and like old punk rock stuff that was like very nostalgic, but also it was very valuable, some of it. It was quite a collection, especially when you're young and you have no money. It was very valuable to me at the time. The records, the posters, the magazines, it's the stuff I collected over the years of people I looked up to artistically, whether it was music or comics. And because of this Bible study, I had this notion that like I really want this transformation to happen. So during this Bible study, I was learning so many new things, spiritually being fed, intellectually being fed so deeply that I had this sort of inkling that some of the things I was doing in my personal life, like partaking in certain types of music and certain types of information, like TV, for example, around this exact same time is when I decided exactly to stop watching TV because I wanted to safeguard my mentality. And I knew that over the next 20 years, just like if you ate something shitty for 20 years, you're going to have a shitty body to work with. I felt like TV was, for the next 20 years, if I kept feeding myself this shit, I was going to be shitty mentally. So I cut it off. I just quit. I've never watched it since. And what I'm saying is I wanted to be reborn. I was actually literally baptized too at this time when I turned 17. And what I had done was I went home with my whole collection of punk rock albums and really cool, like 1 out of 500 pieces, like meaning like really rare stuff. I had a Misfits record actually that you almost can't even find today. And I threw it all in the trash because I was really deeply interested in like, what does it mean? Like we've all had those feelings of like throwing it all away, running away, just starting and erasing new, like completely just drop what we're doing and start somewhere else fresh. These are all indications that you're supposed to be moving from shedding the old shell and growing anew. And it was loud and clear to me at a very young age that this is what I wanted to have happen. Where this exactly came from, why it was so visceral to me to want to do this, I don't know, as opposed to some people just wanting to be safe. I was just always drawn to the part of doing the hard things just to see what was on the other side, And I remember walking that path, meaning I went and I literally collected everything I had that I felt like was what the world would be considered, what traditional, like a conservative sort of Christian lifestyle would be. Anything that I had that was contrary to that at the time, I just completely tossed it and literally threw it in the trash can. And whether that morally was or wasn't the right thing is not what I'm debating. What I'm pointing out is that it was a transformation I clearly was interested in having. And sometimes you have to, whether it actually mattered or not to get rid of all this stuff, it was the path I was willing to take to see. And I got that. I got very loud and clear signal that it was the right thing to do. And so I did it, and it was very difficult. I'll never forget it. It was transformative. And, the old wants to die, the new wants to live. You got to let go of the old so that you can aspire to become the new. Casey says, sometimes I'm a little vague because I don't know at first about that individual because some people just don't care for you to elaborate. That's why I love this group, because we're all people that care. Yeah, sometimes you waste your words on people who don't care to listen. That's the cool thing about this is if you don't care to listen, you don't have to be here. So I'm not concerned about whether or not somebody wants to hear this. If they don't want to, have a good night. Okay. Okay. Some comments about some merch and stuff. It sounds to me like I'm going to have to get some new merch here pretty soon. So we are an hour and 50 minutes in. This is so easy for me to do, you guys. I could do this all night, as usual. You guys know I appreciate you tremendously. I left you with a little bit of cliffhanger earlier, letting you guys know that some of the stuff in the future to come is going to be not only really exciting, but really informative. I definitely have been contacting a lot of talent, if you will. A lot of people who are not just talented, but who something comes along with talent. When you find somebody talented, you find somebody who's passionate. You find somebody who's driven, somebody who's skilled, somebody who's dedicated. And I find that very fascinating. Whether it's fitness and somebody's body reflects that, there's a dedication and a determination, a sort of discipline there. When somebody mentally is sharp and really astounding intellectually, there's a discipline behind that. It's not by accident. When someone's skilled at a high level, artistic or creative, there's something behind all that. It's not just the ends that's interesting. It's the person behind it that's making it happen. I definitely will be bringing a lot of these types of people to you guys in the future, in the near future, hopefully as soon as possible. We'll have to be a little patient because, again, these types of people are going to be very busy. They have a lot going on. I respect their time. And the fact that they even are willing to be on the show in the future is exciting in itself. So I do promise that in the future. Of course, I'm always looking out for new talent as well, meaning I definitely want to have some of the conversations. Regrettably, one of the conversations I really wanted to have on these live streams, I didn't start the live stream. It was just a concept at the time, but a good friend of mine, unfortunately, had passed away in 2021. And it was unfortunate that he was an older man, and he was like a shop regular. He became my friend as soon as I opened doors with my studio. And I always told him, man, his stories were amazing. So one of these days we're going to sit down and just record them and talk. Well, I never got that chance. And so it just kind of left a lasting impression that, there's some of these stories, these especially older men have military experience that, they're 80, 90 plus years old now, and these experiences are about to disappear. And I just like to, I like to be part of that capturing those stories and bringing them to people. I've done it in the past before. I look forward to doing it now, whether it's people my age or younger, but even older veterans that have, world experience that they can share. That kind of stuff just really satisfies me and, makes me feel good to be able to share those types of stories and capture them. So those are things I promise, obviously, in the future. I like what Natalie said, biblical quote, which is not to throw pearls before swine. That's very true. It's something, depending on the translation, thou shalt not cast pearls before swine. That's something I actually pretty much quote every day. Rochelle says, I learned a while back not to waste my breath on some, especially the ones who act like they want your wisdom, but they never show it by continually making the same mistakes over and over. Yeah, that's true. You've got to let people lead by their actions and not be fooled by their words. Maybe a better way of saying what I was trying to translate earlier. I watch what people do, not listen to what they say. What they say is just a clue. What they do is reality. People can be delusional with what they say, and the reality shows through what they do. So that's a way I like to see, especially like I said, when somebody quotes something, I'd rather just see your actions. Let's see how you actually do this. Christy says, art is in so many different things. Yeah, you're right about that. That's for sure. Natalie's chiming in to Rochelle's response, saying, exactly, Rochelle. Sadly, I've held onto friendships for too long, but I've definitely learned to identify vampires much quicker. What's wrong with vampires? So that's all comes obviously with learning. There's regarding that, it reminds me also of something else that I've heard a lot of people say that, there's energy vampires out there. And my experience with that is, as a professional tattooer, I obviously am exposed to sometimes people that I don't always have a choice to or not to be around, right? Like I'm a public shop, people can just walk in. I do have a level of control, but it's not, still serendipity can happen. And these people, time to time, make themselves, get themselves in my proximity. And what I've noticed is it's my choice whether or not to let them be energy vampires. My light does not have to dim and is not dictated by those around me. Matter of fact, you can almost say that's true. Think about some of the greatest people in history. It makes me think of a few people actually that historically didn't care. Their character never broke although they were surrounded by hate, they were surrounded by ridicule, they were surrounded by enemies. They were, of course, here and there, they were surrounded by people who cared and loved them, but some people, the majority of their lives were surrounded by enemies and still kept their character. So never forget that it's not just, avoiding people who are quote unquote, if you will, energy vampires or negative people. It's a matter of, do you have the fortitude to be able to, do you have the ability to be the fortress that you are and be the light in the darkness, regardless of how much dark is around you? Instead of being so susceptible. I think some people forget that you don't have to just protect yourself regarding who you're around. You also have to protect yourself regardless of who you're around, that you can maintain the light inside, if you will. It's a very vague way to put it, but best way I could do in a few seconds. Michelle says, vampires are energy suckers. All right, guys. Well, we have 326 comments, 16 people watching, 13 thumbs up. Thanks for that, because honestly, that is what helps on the YouTubes. I actually just looked at my analytics the other day. No, it was early this morning. Long day. I looked at my analytics, and my watch time hours this year is almost 4,000 hours. So I already have over 1,000 subscribers. I think it's like 1,500 subscribers. And not that always the numbers matter, but what's exciting is that people are watching, people are subscribing, and it continues to grow, which is a good sign because I plan on continuing to grow. If you guys didn't know, me starting this channel and doing the media part of all this isn't because I feel like I have something significant to say, or that my words matter, or that I'm something special as opposed to anybody else. I don't think I'm any more or any less special than anybody. I think that we all have a ton of potential. I just don't think we all tap into it, but my plan is to tap into it. So through being able to do this with you guys, whether it's sharing conversations, ideas, philosophies, or just doing a live stream or a Q&A, the reason why this really gets me going is because it's about me personally developing, right? Letting go of the fear of being on camera, letting go of the fear of saying something stupid, of not performing well, saying something dumb, wrong, or whatever, being judged by it. Letting go of that shit and moving on to just knowing that the more I do this, the better I get, the more I grow, which you guys are going to watch over the years if you haven't already been. That's why I'm doing all this. This is why it's so important to me, is because this is part of the rebirth of the becoming. Matter of fact, something, I dare not say this because I never actually did it, but it was a concept I had in the past that now that the future is here, it's 10 years later since I've had this idea, I always thought it'd be cool to have a show called The Becoming. I'm just really fucking straight up and honest with who I am and what I have and what I've accomplished in my life. What are my goals and what are my hopes and dreams? And sharing that along the way so that 10, 20 years later, you could see how it's manifested and progressed. Whether I end up succeeding or failing, it'll be a documentation of a documentary in a sense through these videos and through my information or through my videos, my podcast, and my show and all these episodes to show you whether or not I made it. And I will report from the other side now 10 years later, although I'd never necessarily embarked on that exact journey. I think if you were to watch me online or know me in person, you would see that there's been quite transformation over the years, that I've always been fairly ambitious and driven, but not always exactly sure what I should do, had ideas about what I'd like to do. Some of them come true, some of them do not, but I'm willing to make those mistakes and willing to be reborn again. Part of the main part of, my life here and what I'm doing online is to be reborn and to die unto my old self, to be reborn anew. And you have to let go of the weakness of, the vulnerability of worrying about what other people think, what other people say, how other people judge you, how they see you and perceive you, whether or not you don't have to be good to start, but you have to start if you want to be good. And that's all I'm here to do, truly. And so, of course, as always, appreciate you guys. I see a lot of flags, so that's really cool. I appreciate that, of course. Always, the flags are awesome. I appreciate you guys tremendously. I love having you on here. This journey is going to be pretty fucking epic with the coming episodes. The future holds nothing but great things and opportunities and blessings, so you guys are part of that, and I, of course, recognize it and appreciate it. And every time you guys send flags, look at all these flags. Let's just do this for a second. Ready? You guys ready? Let's do some flags. See that? You see all these flags? It's pretty awesome. I dig that. So, you guys, thank you so very much. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you guys' watch time because, by the way, if you keep watching and we get a couple more 100 hours this year, I'll be able to actually monetize my channel, which is going to be new for me. I don't actually know where that's going to go from there. But as of now, either way, I'm getting a lot out of this. I hope you are too. I appreciate you. Much love for everybody. Whether we agree or disagree, whether we see eye to eye or not, whether we all have something to learn from each other or not. Maybe it's just entertainment. Maybe it's just fun. Maybe you're just here for the laughs, the dad jokes, the flags, or who knows, maybe the hot chicks. Maybe you're here for the hot chicks because there's a lot more women on here than there is me. Whatever you guys are here for, I appreciate you and look forward to seeing you every Wednesday, of course. And that's it, guys. Have a good night. Don't forget, next Wednesday, stay tuned. It'll be episode 55. 55 is a pretty big fucking number. We're going to keep rocking and rolling. And good night.